One of the most useful resources for looking at change in our local area, which is Cheshire, is the Cheshire Tithe Maps website, which you can find at that URL. It's maps.cheshireeast.gov.uk/tithe maps. What you get once you open it up is a map, a modern Ordnance Survey map on the right hand side, and on this side you've got the tithe maps from around 1850. Let's look at a location. Let's go to Parkgate, which is on the Wirral, and look for change and continuity. So search, and we select Parkgate, Parkgate Road, and there we have the map. So here we have the tithe map from 1850. On the left hand side, on the right hand side, we've got the modern Ordnance Survey map. So we can superimpose one on top of the other and see clearly where things have changed and things have stayed the same. So for example, in 1850, we had the chapel there in the centre of the map on the left. And if we scroll across, you can see that the chapel is now is still there. It's in fact a church rather than a chapel on the current map. Now, one of the most useful things about the tithe maps is that it shows who owned the land, who was the tenant on the land perhaps, who farmed it back in 1850. Well, the precise date is 1847. So if we go down here, you can, for example, click on this plot of land, this field, and see that it was owned, as was most of Parkgate, by the Mostyn family. But the occupier, the tenant, was Esther Briscoe, which is quite unusual for a woman to be a landowner at that period. So if we click off that, let's try this field and see who owned this rather extensive field actually. There we go, sorry. That's again owned by the Mostyn family, and again Esther Briscoe. Let's try this one. Now, a different landowner here, William Rothwell. Let's move a little further down. Try this plot, which was 156, and it again is tenanted by Esther Briscoe. So she must have been a lady of some importance to have tenanted, farmed quite so much land. This again, Esther Briscoe. Now, remember that name, because we'll be coming back to it later on. Okay, another thing that you can do with the Tithe Maps website is change the left-hand side map to a different time. So, for example, let's go and change the maps, and let's take a look at a slightly more modern map, 1898 Ordnance Survey. Click on that, and the map transforms into the Ordnance Survey map from the turn of the 19th into the 20th century. And you can see that now we've got some labels for the features, and we've got some changes, as well as some things that have stayed very much the same. Let's zoom in a little. Perhaps that's a little too much. Scroll the modern map across, and we can see that where we had the Union Hotel here back in 1898, it's still a hotel, and in fact it's the Ship Hotel. Stayed pretty much the same. This building here, which is labelled as Mostyn House, was a school, and still you can see those buildings there. And the buildings up here, further to the north, we have a PH, or public house, which if we scroll the modern map across, you will see has stayed very much the same. It's the Red Lion Hotel. And there was a post office on the frontier in Parkgate in 1898. No longer a post office, however, but the building is still very much there. Let's look again for some changes. Let's load up a different map. Let's try about 10 years later, in 1910, and the map should change to the 1910 version, which is pretty similar, I would think. Yes. So we've still got the Union Hotel where the ship is, and the public house is still where it was. Seaview House we can see on the modern map, and Mostyn House School is very much still in evidence. So lots of change, but much that has stayed the same. If we go back to the original tithe maps, we can see in Parkgate the buildings along the front, and then behind the buildings we have this very long, straight path. It was in fact a rope walk where ropes were wound. Now that rope walk, that feature, can still be seen on the modern map. Here, on the back of these houses, you've got that straight path. And in fact, it is still known as the rope walk and is still a footpath. So, Cheshire tithe maps, have an explore. Put in perhaps another location and explore the changes between now and the 1850s, and load some of the other maps to see other changes, and to see changes from one time, say 1875, to 1898. Or perhaps compare the maps with the aerial view. So aerial imagery here from 2015 to 17. We can zoom in and see how the map corresponds to the aerial view.